A deceptive appearance. The HSS Odyssey hung in the void of space, its battered hull and patchwork of repairs earning more than a few sideways glances from passing ships. Commander Jace Sullivan stood on the bridge, ignoring the snickers and jabs that crackled over the comms. He knew the Odyssey didn't look like much compared to the sleek, modern warships of other races. But that was precisely the point. Ugly is sin, but she's got it where it counts, Jace muttered, running a hand along the command console. The Odyssey's outdated appearance belied the cutting-edge technology hidden beneath its skirt exterior. Quantum reactors, neutron cannons, and an AI more advanced than anything the galaxy had seen, all disguised as rusty hull plates and flickering displays. Jace's first officer, Lieutenant Kira Voss, approached with a datapad. Long-range sensors have picked up a Zorian fleet entering the outer reaches of human territory, she reported, her brow furrowed. Their trajectory suggests they're heading for the Athena colony. Jace scowled. The Zorians, a ruthless, insectoid race, had been testing humanity's borders for months. Each probe was bolder than the last, an unspoken challenge daring the humans to blink first. Numbers? Jace asked. At least 30 ships, Kira replied grimly. Destroyers and cruisers mostly, with a dreadnought at the center. The Athena colony's defenses won't stand a chance. Jace's mind raced, star maps and strategies whirling behind his eyes. The Odyssey was only one ship, but it was the best, perhaps only, chance the Athena colony had. Set a course to intercept, he ordered, and ready the Hephaestus. The bridge crew exchanged nervous glances, but followed Jace's commands with the efficiency of long practice. They knew as well as Jace did that the Hephaestus, the Odyssey's primary weapon, was not to be used lightly. Powered by the ship's quantum reactor, it was capable of slicing through shields and armor like a hot knife through butter. As the Odyssey rocketed through space to meet the oncoming Zorian threat, Jace allowed himself a small, tight smile. The Zorians, like so many others, would learn the folly of underestimating humanity. They would see that the Odyssey's unassuming appearance masked a fierce, unyielding spirit. The Zorian fleet came into view, a swarm of angular, chitinous ships bristling with spines and crackling with green energy. They spread out in a standard attack formation, the dreadnought at their heart like a queen ant directing their soldiers. They're not even trying to hide their intentions, Kira snarled. Jace's eyes narrowed. Then let's send them a message. All power to shields and weapons. The bridge dimmed as energy surged through the Odyssey's power conduits. The quantum reactor hummed, a barely audible whisper that sent shivers down the spine. On the view screen, the Zorian ships grew larger, their wicked curves and barbed protrusions thrown into sharp relief. Incoming transmission from the Zorian flagship, the comms officer reported. On screen, Jace crossed his arms as the view screen filled with the visage of a Zorian commander, its compound eyes glittering and mandibles clicking. Human vessel, you are trespassing in Zorian space. The Zorian clicked, its voice a grating buzz. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. Jace raised an eyebrow. I think you'll find that you're the ones trespassing. Commander, this is human territory, and we don't take kindly to uninvited guests. The Zorian's mandibles clacked furiously. You dare defy the might of the Zorian Empire. Your primitive ship is no match for our fleet. Surrender now and your deaths will be swift. Jace leaned forward, his voice low and dangerous. I think you'll find that the Odyssey is full of surprises. Kira, target their flagship and fire the Hephaestus on my mark. Kira grinned fiercely. With pleasure, sir. The Zorian commander's eyes widened. You bluff human. No ship that small could possibly. Fire. A lance of blinding white energy erupted from the Odyssey's prow, spanning the distance between the ships in a heartbeat. It struck the Zorian flagship dead center, the dreadnought's shields flaring and failing in an instant. The beam tore through the ship's heart, leaving molten edges and vaporized decks in its wake. For a moment, the Zorian fleet hung in stunned silence, their flagship drifting in two halves. Then, as one, they turned and fled, disappearing into the depths of space. Ace let out a long, slow breath. "Stand down weapons," he said softly, "and set a course for the Athena colony. I think they'll want to hear about this." As the Odyssey pivoted and accelerated away from the battlefield, Jace couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. The Zorians had underestimated them, just as so many others had before. But the Odyssey and her crew had shown them the error of their ways. It was a lesson that the galaxy would not soon forget. Humanity, for all its perceived weaknesses and eccentricities, was a force to be reckoned with, and the HSS Odyssey, with its battered hull and patchwork repairs, was the embodiment of that indomitable human spirit. An uneasy alliance. The Odyssey's victory over the Zorian fleet sent shockwaves through the galactic community. Rumors and whispers spread like wildfire, tales of the battered human warship that had single-handedly driven off an entire Zorian assault force. Some dismissed the stories as exaggeration or outright fabrication, but others took a more cautious approach. If even a fraction of the rumors were true, then humanity was a rising power to be reckoned with. Among those taking notice were the Eldari, a reclusive and technologically advanced species known for their mastery of quantum mechanics and subspace manipulation. Eldari ships were rarely seen outside their own territory, and their motives were often inscrutable to other races. So when an Eldari envoy requested permission to board the Odyssey, Jace was understandably wary. "They've never shown interest in us before," Jace mused as he watched the sleek, silver Eldari shuttle approach on the view screen. "Why now?" Kira shook her head. "Could be they see us as a potential ally against the Zorians. Or maybe they just want to get a closer look at our tech." Jace frowned. The Eldari were notorious for their advanced technology, surpassing even the most cutting-edge human developments. The idea that they might be interested in the Odyssey's secrets was not a comforting one. The Eldari shuttle docked with the Odyssey, and a delegation led by Ambassador Xyloth stepped aboard. Xyloth was tall and slender, with pale blue skin and silver hair that seemed to shimmer under the light. His eyes were a piercing violet, and his movements were graceful and precise. "Commander Sullivan," Xyloth greeted, his voice soft and melodious. "Thank you for receiving us. I come bearing a proposal from the Eldari High Council." Jace inclined his head, masking his unease behind a veneer of diplomatic courtesy. "We're honored by your visit, Ambassador. What does the High Council propose?" Xyloth smiled, a slight curl of his thin lips. "The Zorian Empire grows bolder with each passing day. Their incursions into human and Eldari space have not gone unnoticed. The High Council believes that an alliance between our peoples may be the key to checking Zorian aggression." Jace's eyebrows rose. An alliance with the Eldari was not something to be considered lightly. Their technology and resources could tip the balance of power in the galaxy, but at what cost? The Eldari were notoriously secretive and self-interested, and Jace had heard rumors of their ruthless pragmatism. "An alliance is a weighty proposition," Jace said carefully. "What would the Eldari offer, and what would they expect in return?" Xyloth spread his hands. "The Eldari would share our intelligence on Zorian movements and tactics. We would also provide advanced weaponry and shielding technology to upgrade your ships. In return, we ask only that humanity stand with us against the Zorian threat." Jace's mind raced. The Eldari's offer was tempting, dangerously so. With their technology and the Odyssey's quantum reactor, the Zorians could be beaten back, perhaps even defeated entirely. But the price of such an alliance could be high, and Jace was not certain humanity was ready to pay it. "I will need to consult with my superiors," Jace said at last. "A decision of this magnitude cannot be made lightly." Xyloth inclined his head. "Of course, Commander. The Eldari will await your answer, but do not tarry too long. The Zorians will not rest, and each day brings them closer to victory." With that, the Eldari delegation departed, leaving Jace alone with his thoughts. He knew that an alliance with the Eldari could change the course of the war, perhaps even the course of history. But he also knew that such a pact would come with its own perils and pitfalls. As he stared out at the stars, Jace couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing on the edge of a precipice. The choice he made in the coming days would shape the future of not just humanity, but the entire galaxy. And the weight of that responsibility settled heavy on his shoulders. In the end, after long discussions with his crew and superiors, Jace made the decision to accept the Eldari's offer. The benefits outweighed the risks, he argued, and humanity needed every advantage it could get against the Zorians. But even as the alliance was forged and Eldari technology began to flow into human ships and stations, Jace couldn't escape the nagging doubt that gnawed at the back of his mind. Had he made the right choice, or had he unwittingly led humanity down a path from which there was no return? Only time would tell, and as the Odyssey set out on its next mission, Jace could only hope that the gamble he had taken would pay off in the end. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and the Odyssey and her crew were now at the heart of the storm. Betrayal from within. The alliance between humanity and the Eldari proved fruitful in the early days of the war. Eldari intelligence allowed human fleets to anticipate Zorian attacks and counter them before they could do significant damage. Eldari technology, integrated into human ships, gave them a fighting chance against the Zorians' superior numbers and firepower. But as the months wore on, Jace began to notice discrepancies in the information the Eldari provided. Small at first, easily dismissed as the fog of war, but gradually growing more significant and harder to ignore. Ships and bases that the Eldari claimed were safe would come under sudden, devastating attack. Zorian fleets would appear as if from nowhere, striking at the heart of human defenses. Jace's suspicions came to a head during a joint operation to scout a suspected Zorian staging ground. The Odyssey, accompanied by an Eldari frigate, the Silverlight, was tasked with investigating the remote asteroid field and reporting back on any Zorian activity. As they navigated the treacherous field, Jace couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The Eldari captain, a taciturn male named Zin, seemed on edge, his communications clipped and evasive. "I don't like this," Kira muttered, her eyes glued to the sensor readouts. "The Eldari are acting strange. It's like they're expecting something to happen." Jace nodded grimly. "Keep an eye on them, and be ready for anything." His words proved prophetic. As the Odyssey and the Silverlight approached the heart of the asteroid field, a massive Zorian fleet emerged from behind the tumbling rocks. Dozens of ships, led by a gargantuan dreadnought, bore down on the human and Eldari vessels. "It's a trap," Jace shouted. "Evasive maneuvers, now." The Odyssey veered sharply, narrowly avoiding a barrage of plasma fire. But the Silverlight, rather than turning to engage the Zorians, accelerated directly towards them. "What are they doing?" Kira gasped. "They're going to get themselves killed." But as the Silverlight closed with the Zorian fleet, a sickening realization dawned on Jace. The Eldari ship wasn't trying to attack the Zorians. It was joining them. "Zin, what the hell are you doing?" Jace demanded over the comms. The Eldari captain's face appeared on the view screen, a cruel smile twisting his features. "Surely you didn't think the Eldari would actually ally themselves with humans?" He sneered. "You are nothing to us, mere pawns in a greater game. And now you will be sacrificed for the greater good." With that, the Silverlight opened fire on the Odyssey, its advanced weapons tearing through the human ship shields. The Zorian fleet, seizing the moment, surged forward, encircling the Odyssey in a deadly web of firepower. "Shields down to 20%, Kira cried. "We can't take much more of this." Jace gritted his teeth. "Reroute all power to engines and weapons. And ready the Hephaestus. We're going to have to fight our way out of this." The Odyssey, battered but unbowed, charged into the heart of the Zorian fleet, its neutron cannons blazing. Zorian ships exploded under the onslaught, but for every one destroyed, 2 more took its place. The Silverlight, its own weapons now turned against its former ally, rained down fire on the Odyssey's weakened shields. In that moment, with death on all sides and betrayal burning in his heart, Jace made a fateful decision. "Activate the quantum reactor," he ordered. "Full power to the Hephaestus." The bridge crew hesitated, knowing the risk. The quantum reactor, pushed to its limits, could tear the ship apart. But they also knew that it was their only chance. With a roar that shook the very fabric of space, the Hephaestus unleashed a beam of pure, blinding energy. It cut through the Zorian fleet like a scythe through wheat, vaporizing ships and leaving only glowing debris in its wake. The silver light, caught in the beam's edge, shuddered and burst apart, Zin's final scream echoing over the comms. The Zorian fleet, suddenly faced with an opponent that could annihilate them with a single shot, broke and ran. The Odyssey, its reactor glowing white-hot and its hull cracked and blackened, limped away from the battlefield, its crew shaken to the core. In the aftermath, Jace and his crew struggled to come to terms with the Eldari's betrayal. The alliance, which had once seemed like humanity's best hope, had been nothing more than a ruse, a ploy by the Eldari to weaken both sides for their own benefit. But even as the bitter taste of treachery lingered in their mouths, Jace and his crew knew that they couldn't give up. The Zorians, bolstered by Eldari technology and emboldened by their victory, would be coming for them. And humanity needed the Odyssey and her crew now more than ever. As they set course for the nearest friendly base, Jace steeled himself for the battles to come. The war had taken a dark turn, but he and his crew would not falter. They would fight on, no matter the cost, until the Zorian threat was ended and humanity was safe once more. The knowledge of the Eldari's betrayal spread quickly through human space, sowing fear and doubt among the populace. Trust in alien alliances was shattered, and many called for humanity to withdraw from the galactic stage and focus on defending its own borders. But Jace and his superiors knew that isolation was not the answer. The Zorians, with or without Eldari support, would not stop until humanity was subjugated or destroyed. The only choice was to fight, to rally the remaining human colonies and strike back against the encroaching darkness. And so, even as the Odyssey licked its wounds and repaired its battle damage, plans were drawn up for a final, desperate offensive. The Zorian homeworld, long thought to be an impregnable fortress, was to be the target. If humanity could strike at the heart of the Zorian Empire, it could end the war once and for all. But to do so would require every ship, every soldier, every ounce of courage and determination that humanity could muster. It would be a gamble of the highest order, a roll of the dice with the fate of an entire species hanging in the balance. As the fleets gathered and the Odyssey prepared for its most crucial mission yet, Jace couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment. The choices he had made, the alliances he had forged and seen broken, had all led to this. And now, with the eyes of history upon him, he would lead his ship and his crew into the very jaws of hell itself. It was a heavy burden, but one that Jace bore with grim resolve. For the sake of humanity, for the memory of those lost to Zorian and Eldari alike, he would see this through to the bitter end. No matter the cost, no matter the sacrifice, he would not rest until the galaxy was safe and humanity's future was secure. The road ahead was dark and fraught with peril, but the Odyssey and her crew would not falter. They were the best of humanity, the brightest stars in a galaxy full of shadows, and they would shine on, no matter how deep the darkness grew. The plan was audacious, bordering on the suicidal. The Zorian homeworld, Zoria Prime, was a fortress of unparalleled strength, guarded by a fleet that dwarfed anything humanity had ever faced. To assault it directly was to court annihilation, to risk the very extinction of the human race. But there was no choice. The Zorians, flush with their victories and armed with Eldari technology, were pressing their advantage. Human colonies were falling one by one, their defenses overwhelmed, and their populations enslaved or worse. If humanity did not act now, it might never have another chance. And so, the fleets gathered. Every ship, every soldier that could be spared was called to the muster. The Odyssey, still bearing the scars of its last battle, led the vanguard, its quantum reactor humming with barely contained power. Jace stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the viewscreen as Zoria Prime grew larger. The planet was a mottled brown and green, its surface obscured by swirling clouds of toxic gas. But even from this distance, he could see the glittering swarms of Zorian ships, their hulls bristling with weapons. "This is it," he said softly, his voice barely audible over the hum of the ship's systems. "The moment of truth." Kira, her face set in a grim mask, nodded. "We're with you, sir, to the end." Jace smiled, a small, sad thing. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that." As the human fleet approached Zoria Prime, the Zorian ships moved to intercept. The space between the two armadas seemed to warp and twist, the fabric of reality straining under the weight of the impending conflict. And then, with a flash of light and a roar of engines, the battle began. The Odyssey surged forward, its neutron cannons blazing. Zorian ships exploded under the onslaught, their hulls shattering and their crews consumed by the vacuum of space. But for every ship destroyed, two more took its place, their weapons raking across the Odyssey's shields. Shields at 50%. Kira shouted over the din of battle. "We can't take much more of this." Jace gritted his teeth. "Reroute power from non-essential systems. And prepare the Hephaestus. We're going to need it." The Odyssey plunged deeper into the Zorian formation, its hull groaning under the strain of the enemy fire. The Hephaestus, its reactor glowing white-hot, unleashed beam after beam of devastating energy, carving great swaths of destruction through the Zorian fleet. But even the Hephaestus could not stem the tide alone. The Zorians, their numbers seemingly endless, pressed their attack, heedless of their losses. The Odyssey, its shields failing and its hull breached in a dozen places, began to falter. It was then, in the darkest moment of the battle, that the true cost of the war became clear. The Zorian dreadnought, a behemoth of unimaginable power, emerged from the heart of the enemy fleet. Its weapons, enhanced by Eldari technology, tore through the human ships like tissue paper, leaving only glowing wreckage in their wake. Jace, his face ashen, watched as the dreadnought turned its attention to the Odyssey. The ship, already on the brink of destruction, shuddered under the impact of the dreadnought's fire. "We can't win this," Kira whispered, her voice thick with despair. "We've lost." But Jace, his eyes hard and his jaw set, shook his head. "No, not yet. Not while we still draw breath." With a final, desperate command, Jace ordered the Odyssey to ram the dreadnought. The ship, its engines straining and its hull cracking under the stress, hurtled towards the Zorian behemoth. The impact was cataclysmic. The Odyssey, its quantum reactor overloading, exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The dreadnought, caught in the blast, shuddered and broke apart, its fragments spinning away into the void. For a moment, the battlefield was still, the surviving ships on both sides reeling from the shock of the Odyssey's sacrifice. And then, as if by some unspoken signal, the human fleet surged forward, their weapons blazing with renewed fury. The Zorians, their flagship destroyed and their morale shattered, began to falter. Their ships, once so formidable, fell before the human onslaught like wheat before the scythe. And as the last Zorian ship exploded into a cloud of debris, a ragged cheer went up from the human fleet. They had won. Against all odds, against the might of the Zorian Empire and the treachery of the Eldari, they had emerged victorious. But the cost had been high. The Odyssey, the ship that had been the vanguard of humanity's defense, was gone, its crew sacrificed in the heat of battle, and countless other ships and crews had fallen, their lives given in defense of their species. As the fleet regrouped and began the long journey home, the weight of their losses hung heavy over them. They had won the war, but at a price that would be felt for generations to come. And yet, even in the midst of their grief, there was a sense of pride, of accomplishment. They had faced the greatest threat humanity had ever known, and they had triumphed. The galaxy, once so dark and full of terror, now held the promise of a brighter future. It was a future that Jace, had he lived, would have been proud to see. A future where humanity, tested in the crucible of war, had emerged stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before. And though the Odyssey was gone, its legacy would live on. Its sacrifices, and the sacrifices of all those who had fought and died alongside it, would never be forgotten. For they were the best of humanity, the brightest stars in a galaxy full of darkness, and their light would shine on, a beacon of hope and courage for all the generations to come. In the years that followed the Great War, humanity slowly began to rebuild. The Zorian threat, once so terrifying and seemingly insurmountable, was gone, broken by the courage and sacrifice of the Odyssey and her crew. But the scars of the conflict ran deep. The betrayal of the Eldari had shaken humanity's trust in alien alliances, and many worlds chose to isolate themselves, focusing on their own defense and recovery. Yet even as humanity turned inward, the legend of the Odyssey and her crew spread outward. On every world, in every colony, the story was told of the battered, unassuming ship that had stood against the might of the Zorian Empire and triumphed. In the great halls of Earth, a monument was erected in honor of the Odyssey and her crew. Their names, etched in stone and illuminated by eternal flames, served as a reminder of the price of freedom and the courage of those who had paid it. And on the frontier, where the borders of human space brushed against the unknown, a new generation of ships and crews took up the mantle of the Odyssey. They were the Pathfinders, the Vanguard, the Resolute, names chosen to echo the spirit of the ship that had come before. These new ships, built on the lessons and the sacrifices of the past, were the cutting edge of human ingenuity and determination. They ventured out into the galaxy, not as conquerors or tyrants, but as explorers and diplomats, seeking out new worlds and new allies in the ongoing struggle for peace. For the galaxy, though free of the Zorian threat, was still a dangerous place. New enemies emerged from the shadows, while old foes, like the Eldari, plotted and schemed in the background. But humanity, tempered by the fires of war and united by the memory of the Odyssey, stood strong. They knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, no matter what dangers threatened them, they would face them together. And at the heart of this new era of unity and purpose was the legacy of Commander Jace Sullivan and his crew. Their courage, their sacrifice, had become the stuff of legend, a shining example of the best that humanity had to offer. In the academies and training grounds of Earth and beyond, new generations of officers and crew were taught the story of the Odyssey. They learned of the ship's cunning tactics, its innovative use of technology, and its unwavering dedication to the defense of humanity. But more than that, they learned of the human spirit that had animated the Odyssey and her crew. The determination to stand against impossible odds, the willingness to sacrifice for the greater good, the unbreakable bond of camaraderie and shared purpose. These were the qualities that had made the Odyssey legendary, and they were the qualities that would guide humanity into the future. Years turned to decades and decades to centuries. Humanity spread across the stars, building new worlds and forging new alliances. The old wounds healed, and the old hatreds faded into memory. But through it all, the legend of the Odyssey endured. In every corner of human space, the ship and her crew were remembered and honored. Their names were given to children, their deeds recounted in song and story, and in the hearts of every human who looked to the stars and dreamed of exploration and adventure. The spirit of the Odyssey lived on. It was a spirit of courage in the face of the unknown, of unity in the face of adversity, of hope in the face of darkness. For the Odyssey, in her final glorious stand, had shown what humanity was capable of when it stood together. She had been more than a ship. She had been a symbol, a beacon, a guiding light in a galaxy full of shadows. And as humanity continued its journey into the infinite reaches of space, the light of the Odyssey would continue to shine, a reminder of the courage and the sacrifice that had brought them to the stars, and a promise of the glories yet to come. The end.